Can you hear me, everyone? Ooh. So back to the intro there. I would consider myself a censorship resistant maxi. So whichever chain can deliver censorship resistance, I'm that maximalist. Okay, so today we'll be talking about a new approach to liquid staking. But before we get into the talk, I just want to kind of bring something to everyone's attention. I think that we may have just made it out of the deepest and the longest bear market in our industry's history, and that's not easy. And I think everyone in this room deserves a round of applause for that. So let's just take a moment. It really isn't easy to run your business, stay solvent, and frankly keep a level head during a bear market. So you all should be really proud that we're here. So today's talk is going to be a new approach to liquid staking. Let me give a background on myself. So I am a finance guy, but the reason I'm interested in crypto is the censorship resistance. I think that we can create a new financial system that is more transparent, more publicly accessible, and more fair. But I think that we're at a unique crossroad because the certain financial products that we're building now on top of this infrastructure are potentially removing some of those attributes in exchange for higher yield. So we're at this crossroad where we are preferring yield at the expense of censorship resistance. And I think that's a massive problem. So today we're going to be talking about a new approach to liquid staking, one that satisfies this demand for high yield products, but doesn't infringe on those core principles that brought us here in the first place. So let's just get right into it. We're going to first talk about liquid staking in its current form and some potential shortcomings. We'll talk about Tenderize v2, which is the protocol we're working on. Then we'll talk about, or after the core principles of what we believe, credibly neutral liquid staking should be, we'll talk about how those principles get translated into on-chain architecture. And then we'll close it out by looking at some of those fun degen style strategies that a lot of people really love, and we can build them in such a way that still respects those core decentralization, permissionless, and censorship resistant attributes. So let's look at liquid staking today. Think of this like you're looking down on the Ethereum staking ecosystem. All of those dots on the left are various validators that custody stake and are validating and supporting Ethereum. In the middle, you'll see a couple of the popular liquid staked tokens. And then on the right, you'll see that a lot of these liquid staked tokens get their liquidity from Curve or Uniswap. And if you see, each and every one of these LSTs are pointing over toward a certain subset of those validators that are circled. And that's because depending on which liquid staking token you're holding or which protocol you're using, that is what determines which validators are allowed to participate. So it's not permissionless. If you're holding rETH, you're actually holding what is effectively an index of validators that have less than 32 ETH. And the second liquid stake token up on the screen is the Liquid Collective product, which allows for OFAC compliant validators to support that liquid stake token. And let's skip down to the bottom where we have staked ETH. Staked ETH is an index of the 29 most well-known, reputable, and performant staking service providers in the ecosystem. So the key takeaway here is that these liquid stake tokens are effectively index products. The performance of the asset is directly dependent on the performance of the underlying validators. And each and every one of these indexes also has a philosophy around who's allowed to validate. When it comes to liquidity, all of these indexes use the same vanilla liquidity approach. They incentivize the crap out of it on Curve or on Uniswap. And this works pretty dang well for the DeFi native or for the DeFi degen. but it leaves out some really, really important stakeholders. And this might resonate with a lot of people in this room because the people that are left out are the actual node operators. In the liquid staking V1 ecosystem, node operators are basically a second thought. The real user who's prioritized is the individual holding this index. So with this index style, node operators have no ability to create a liquid position for their own independent staking hardware. You're basically stuck minting an index, and then dependent on other people's performance, you may have decreased yield. And even though you're running your own operation and everything's sound, you're now holding an index that could underperform because some other person that you don't even know. So you can't silo your risk to your at-home operation. And two, when you use an index style approach, the stake ends up distributed across all of the validators that support that index. So if you are a staking service provider and one of your large delegates approaches you and says, hey, I have $50 million staked to you, I would love to get a liquid product so I can borrow, lend, do whatever I'd like to do. But today, staking service providers are forced to go tell their delegate that, hey, if you liquid stake with any of these indexes, we're going to lose some of our AUM. So the staking service provider doesn't have a solution where their delegates can stay staked to that preferred partner while still enjoying liquid staking. Not to mention, when you use this index style approach with some subset of validators, you almost can guarantee that you're going to have centralizing attributes due to the fact that liquidity begets liquidity. So the most liquid index on Curve will attract the most stake and centralize that stake to whatever validators are supporting it. So we're arguing that it's time for a new approach. And we're arguing that it's time for the Tenderize approach. Our vision is really simple. We want to create an extremely, extremely bare bones, governance minimized, and credibly neutral liquid staking infrastructure. And on top of this infrastructure, that's where you build all your cool indexes, financial products, leverage products, whatever you might want to build. All of the financial structures go on top of the infrastructure, and the infrastructure is radically bare bones. Such a credibly neutral liquid staking infrastructure is comprised of three core principles. First, you have the permissionless validator set. So instead of the protocol having some sort of whitelist or some sort of philosophy around who and how one validates or joins as a validator in that network, instead you make it permissionless. Second, you make liquidity permissionless. This probably sounds a little too good to be true, but I'll get into it in a moment. And then finally, we do a bottom-up approach to all DeFi structures. So instead of shipping the product with some philosophy from day one, you ship only infrastructure and you allow the market to build on top of it. So let's look first at the permissionless validator set. And the only way to make this thing actually a permissionless validator set is you do validator-specific liquid staking tokens. This means that when the user selects which validator to stake to, their risk and their reward is siloed to one specific hardware, one specific validator. There's no whitelist and there's no governance. This allows independent operators to stake to their at-home system. This allows staking service providers to service their current delegations without losing AUM. And ultimately, it allows for the end user to sleep well at night, knowing that there won't be some governance decision that will change where their stake is living. So let's see what this would look like from a UI perspective. It looks a lot like a delegated proof of stake system. You scroll through to see all the active validators on the network. Let's just say that we want to go to Chorus 1. We select Chorus 1. We send our assets to the smart contract stakes them and returns to you a liquid staking token derivative that is siloed to the performance of Chorus 1. Okay, now we have validator-specific LSTs. But I'm sure you're thinking, how the hell are you going to make these things liquid? Fragmentation's already a problem before you even add this phenomenon of potentially hundreds of liquid stake tokens in the market. And we're going to service these liquid stake tokens not in the vanilla DeFi degen way, which is just to incentivize on Curve, or Uniswap, or whichever your preferred DEX is, but rather, we don't do that at all. We do a shared liquidity approach. And this is possible because we've reduced all of the smart contract risk. These LSTs aren't complex financial structures. They're hyper basic, extremely vanilla, and as a result, you can treat them as one-to-one to its unstaked counterpart. This way that even the newest, smallest validator can enjoy the equal amount of liquidity compared to the incumbents, and there's not this runaway liquidity phenomenon which we observe in the staked ETH ecosystem today. Each and every one of these new derivatives can be routed or liquidated through this liquidity pool. So let's just see what it would look like from the user perspective, because as I mentioned, this isn't designed for the DeFi degen. So we throw it all in one user interface. So there is our validator-specific Chorus 1 position. And very simply, we can begin the unstaking process, which is unstaking it one-to-one, or we can instantly swap, and that will be routed through that public shared liquidity pool. So you're never left holding a bag. You can always unstake by waiting the unstaking period, or you can directly route through the liquidity pool. It's up to you to decide what you'd like to do as the end user. And when it comes to popular liquid staking token DeFi strategies, oftentimes people are curious about, what about liquidations? Is that shared liquidity model going to be deep enough liquidity to offer loans against assets? And I'd challenge everyone to think beyond just the Curve or the Uniswap approach. In traditional finance, there's no robots liquidating positions, but rather you do peer-to-peer liquidations, meaning that in the event that the collateral value is decreasing close to the margin call price, instead of a robot selling that through a public on-chain liquidity pool, any market participant can go in, buy the collateral, and then the difference between the collateral value and the repayment amount of the loan is their profit that they get to capture. So as liquidity re-enters the market, in this hopeful bull market that we're on the forefront of, more sophisticated market participants are entering and will play the role of exercising peer-to-peer liquidations. So when you combine validator-specific LSTs with public permissionless liquidity, you get all of your favorite liquid staking experiences, and those are the ability to tokenize validator-specific stake. You can swap or unstake, and then you can borrow against it. But of course, it doesn't stop there. You can still build your favorite degen products as well. Let's talk about some bottom-up financial structures. So say the market really does prefer a Lido-style index. Let's just say the 29 most performant validators. Fine, build that index, but build it with validator-specific LSTs. Say you want an index of OFAC compliance, just like Alluvial or Liquid Collective. Fine, do it. But do it with validator-specific LSTs. Let the end user have complete flexibility as to where they want to silo their risk. The purpose of this is to allow for flexibility and allow for correct risk-adjusted experiences in the market. And you can build cool things like LST-backed stablecoins. So now if you're a service provider and you want to offer loans against your assets, you can do it completely on-chain with our infrastructure, and your end user gets to stay siloed to their preferred partner, and you all get to retain your assets under management. And then finally, you can get real degen and build structured products on top of it too. You can borrow against it with the stablecoin, buying more of the LST. And you can do this all while siloing your risk to whichever hardware you deem worthy of holding your assets. So that's really what we stand for here. Together, we can take a conscious effort to build all of our favorite high-yielding products, but we can do this all on top of validator-specific LSTs. That's the future of liquid staking, and we don't have to compromise on yield to make it happen. Using validator-specific LSTs, we can retain our decentralization attributes, ensure that our networks remain permissionless, and we can actually deliver on this promise of a new, transparent, and trustworthy financial system. But at the end of the day, we have to do it with validator-specific LSTs. And we just launched our testnet proving out this concept, and I would love to talk more about it to anyone who's interested. If you're a node operator or you're just a user of liquid staking protocols, please come by our booth, check out the testnet, and we'd love to welcome you in our launch cohort if you're so interested. So that's all I have for you today. Please come by, say hello,